I want you to if it'll mean you help them recapture Cronus. No, said Henry sharply. His grip on my shoulder tightened like a vice, but I ignored him. This was between me and Calliope. She laughed, a dark, muted sound that was empty of any real humor. Do you really think that's all I want? She said in a sickly sweet voice. Perfect, Kate, so willing to martyr herself for nothing. But of course, if the author is still open, a flash of lightning sizzled through her. Her body went rigid, and after a tense moment, she slumped in her seat. Beside her, Walter crackled with the electricity. I expected her to be unconscious. No one could possibly withstand that sort of attack. But seconds later, her icy blue eyes opened, and she stared directly at me. It was as if she could see every secret, every thought, every little piece of me that made me who I was, and her lips curled into a cruel smile. Kate, said Henry, we need to go now. The moment I broke eye contact, Calliope hissed. The sound of her voice slithered through the room, creeping under my skin and gluing me to the floor. You have my word, Kate Winters, she said, and a wisp of smoke escaped from her mouth. I will do to you what you have done to me, and I will take what you love most from you while you are helpless to stop me. A strange prickling heat filled me, and there was something menacing about it, as if it were a degree away from being sharp and unyielding pain. What? I started before I could say anything else. Henry stopped between us, and the feeling was gone as soon as it came. Get her to Theo, said Walter, and without giving me a choice, Henry pushed me out of the room and slammed the door behind him. Taking my arm, he hurried along the hallway, and I had to run to keep up. What's going on? I said, my heart pounding. What was that? I don't know, said Henry, and he swore. I'm sorry, Kate. I told Walter it was not a good idea, but he did not listen, and Philip took his side. It's not your fault, I frowned, and he rushed me wherever it was we were going. I took inventory. I didn't feel any different. She can't really kill me, right? We can't kill each other? She cannot kill you, but there are several things she can do to you to make you wish you were dead. That wasn't exactly reassuring. We turned a corner, and I sped up to match his stride. What can she do? I don't feel any different now. Nothing hurts. It may not be physical, said Henry. In many ways, she is the most powerful of us all. Do not tell your mother or Sophia I said so, but my sisters are more powerful than my brothers. We have the advantage of brute force, but their abilities center around life itself. My mother loved nature, I knew that, and she had many uncanny ability to grow anything anywhere. It made sense for who she was, and if growing a tree in the middle of Manhattan counted as a power, it was a nice one to have. Why are you not telling me? I recognized where we were now. The hallway led into the antechamber and the throne room. It's no one thing, he said, holding the door open for me. Merely what she is capable of, why her gift is so important to capturing Cronus, and maybe why she was convinced that he will not harm her, is because she has the ability to control loyalty and commitment. She was Hera, I remembered. Hera was the goddess of marriage and women. If those were the things she could control, then do you think she did something to make me disloyal? I said. She could possibly make me cheat on Henry? Was that what she meant by saying she would take away what I loved the most? I don't know, said Henry grimly, ushering me into the throne room and through the aisle of pillars. There's a chance she did not have enough time to do whatever she wanted to do, but it will not hurt to check. The good news is that she did not turn you into an animal. She does that all the time. She favors cows in particular. Well, that was a relief then. I didn't exactly like the idea of having an udder. He stopped at the end of the aisle. The other council members milled around, speaking in whispers saturated with worry, and only a few glanced their way. Theo, if you would. Theo broke from the crowd, letting Ella's hand go in the process. While I'd been in Eden, I hadn't realized how close they were, but now I rarely saw one without the other. No wonder Ella had been in such a terrible mood while she'd been with me and Calliope. Are you hurt? Said Theo to me, and I shook my head. Is it possible Calliope did something to her? Said Philip before I could explain. Would you mind looking her over? Theo gestured for me to sit near the nearby bench. I did so and waited as he held his hands out, and this time golden warmth washed over me. Several seconds passed, and finally Theo pulled away, a line forming between his eyebrows. There is some superficial damage from the cavern, but other than that, there's nothing else. She is fine. Are you certain? Said Henry, and Theo nodded. Henry turned away from me and gripped the back of the bench so hard the wood splintered beneath his fingers. That doesn't mean it was something mental, right? I said, my voice hitching with fear. Or am I going to go crazy? Henry didn't move. Beside me, Theo shuffled his feet. It is more likely that she simply didn't have time to finish, he said, eyeing Henry. There's nothing to worry about until something happens. And when it does, said Henry dangerously. Theo frowned and Ella moved to his side to take his hand. He seemed to relax at her touch. Then we will deal with it the best we can. However, until we know there is a problem, there is nothing we can do about it. No, said Henry, I suppose there is not. Without warning, he stormed back toward the door. I scrambled to my feet and mumbled an apology that I pushed past Theo and Ella, and I hurried after him. Henry, please wait for me. Before I could reach him, he slipped into the antechamber and slammed the door behind him. The murmuring in the throne room grew quiet, And once everyone realized what was going on, curious buzzing replaced their whispers, and I didn't stick around to hear it. I dashed into the hallway, but when I turned the corner, there was no sign of Henry in the long corridor. I spun around, wondering if I'd somehow missed him in the antechamber, but it was empty. He was gone. Chapter 15. The Weed and the Rose. I spent the afternoon searching the entire wing for Henry, but no one had seen him. Several of the doors were locked, and I made a point of avoiding the one Calliope was behind, but unless he was in there or had purposely locked the door behind him, he wasn't in the part of the palace I was familiar with. By the time I returned to the bedroom, I half expected to see him on the bed waiting for me. Instead, it was Pogo who greeted me with an excited yip and wagging tail. As terrible as I felt, I scooped my puppy up and cuddled him as he licked my cheek. It wasn't enough to completely chase away my fears and worries, but it was good enough to hold them at bay for now. I missed you, I said, giving him a good scratch behind the ears. My mother wasn't there anymore, undoubtedly having joined the others, and I sat cross-legged in the middle of the bed I was supposed to share with Henry. Wait until you hear about the month I've had. But before I could get another word in, a familiar sensation washed over me, and I once again plunged into darkness. This time, instead of reappearing in the cavern where Kronos worked to escape his prison, I found myself standing in the middle of a dimly lit room that stretched for 20 feet in either direction. On either side of the room, on one side of the room, was nothing but a continuous window that looked out across a vast cavern, and a fire crackled in a marble fireplace opposite the view. There were no curtains, and the sole piece of furniture was a white armchair. Henry sat in it, clutching the armrests so hard I feared they would break. "Henry," I whispered, unsure if he could hear me or not. For a moment at the entrance to Tartarus I thought he could, but now when I tried to brush my ghostly fingers against his he didn't so much as blink. The door on the far side of the room opened and shut. Persephone padded across the marble floor, barefoot and wearing a simple cotton dress. In the soft light she looked breathtakingly beautiful, and I bit my lip. With the possible exception of Ava, I had never met anyone in my life who had the power to make me feel like a weed beside a rose. "I thought I'd find you in here," said Persephone. "I come to here to think," Henry said distantly. "I thought you were on your way back. I decided to stick around for a little while. You lot need all the help you can get, especially you." She took Henry's hand, the same one I tried to touch moments before. "Mother told me what happened. Kate is looking all over for you." Henry shrugged and didn't pull away. "I would rather not face her yet." "Why's that?" said Persephone, perching on the armrest. "Exactly the question I've been dying to know." For a long time he didn't answer. "She could have died because I was foolish enough to put her in harm's way," he finally said, his words as heavy as they fell from his lips. "I've done everything but put her in danger since the moment we left. I cannot do it any more." That was why he'd run? Because he thought he was a danger to me? Something inside of me uncoiled. That was ridiculous, and now that I knew, we could talk about it. I could set things right. Persephone rolled her eyes, and that, for once, I agreed with her. "What Calliope tried to do isn't your fault, and Theo said the tests were clear. Nothing happened to her." The cords in Henry's neck stood out from the tension in his body. "We don't know for certain. Everything turns out all right. I agreed to put her in that position if I'd agreed to go. I wasn't completely helpless. Didn't Henry understand that? I wasn't mortal anymore. Calliope couldn't kill me, and eventually he had to acknowledge that I wasn't going to break if someone breathed wrong around me." Persephone ran her fingers through Henry's dark hair, and a lump formed in my throat. I didn't want to be there watching this, but I couldn't look away, and I had no idea how to get back to my body. Seeing them act so close despite being separated for 1,000 years, I ached. It was as if Persephone had never left, and Henry was simply confiding in his wife about something that had happened during the day. That was supposed to be my job, but I couldn't do it while he was hiding from me. My sister knew him well enough not to need to search for hours in the wrong places, though. "She's been through much worse over the past few weeks," said Persephone. "Your new girl's tough, isn't she?" "Yes," said Henry. "When she decides to do something, it is impossible to change her mind. Consequences be—" Persephone snorted. "Sounds like someone else I know. She loves you, you know, more than I ever did." Pain flickered across Henry's face, but it was gone as soon as it came. "She does not know me. When she learns who I really am, she will go. Just like me?" He stared silently out of the window. Persephone slid off the armrest into his lap, and she looped her arms around his neck as if she'd never left him. My throat tightened, and I dug my nails into my palms. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to see this. I didn't care how little Persephone loved him, and it didn't matter what my mother or James or Ava said. Henry was still in love with her, and he would always choose her over me. When he embraced her in return, a sob bubbled up inside of me, and I turned towards the window. Even then I could see their reflection. As I tried as I might, I couldn't look away. This was it. Our relationship, our marriage, was dying before he so much as given it a chance. "Sometimes I wonder what things would have been like if I'd stayed," she said. "How our life together would have been different if we'd taken our time instead of jumping into things." "Happier," said Henry quietly. "Fool." "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe not." They were both silent for the space of several heartbeats, and when Persephone spoke again, she leaned in toward him until her lips were inches from his. I closed my eyes. "You deserve someone who matches you," she said. "What happened between us wasn't your fault. We're two different people, and no matter how strongly you convinced yourself that I'm your one and only, it means nothing when you're not mine." I held my breath. She was doing this on purpose. She was ripping him apart. So why? So he wouldn't be hung up on her anymore to make room for me? His heart was broken enough as it was. How was I supposed to find all the pieces and put them back together if she shattered it? "Stop," I begged, knowing it was useless. Didn't she know what she was doing to him? Of course she did. I'd known Henry for a year, and it was excruciatingly obvious to me. She'd known him for eons. "Are you truly happy with Adonis?" said Henry at last. Persephone smiled faintly. "When I wake up, the first thing I see is his face. I know it's going to be a great day. That isn't going to change no matter how much time passes." Henry threaded his fingers through her hair, and Persephone made no move to stop him. "Do you ever regret leaving?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she found his free hand and laced her fingers in his. "Sometimes. I miss the sun, the real thing, not the one in my afterlife. I miss my mother. I miss our family. I miss the seasons. I miss change." She pressed her lips to his knuckles. "Sometimes I even miss you. Adonis is lucky. He's like every other soul. He doesn't fully realize what's going on in the world around him is fake. I do, and sometimes that's enough to make a difference." Henry stroked her cheek with the back of his hand, and his eyes shifted from the window to her. He looked at her the way he looked at me the night we'd slept together, and my chest ached. "Why couldn't I wake up? You could come back." Persephone gave him a sad smile. "What about Kate? You wouldn't do that to her." "I know you better than that. You might have her fooled, but I can tell you how you feel about her." Henry was silent, and my heart beat so hard that I thought it might explode. Would he? Was he asking her to return as his queen or as his wife? Could she even do that? Dizzy, I leaned against the window and wished with every fiber of my being that the glass would disappear and let me fall. At least then I wouldn't have to hear this. I thought about leaving through the door, but if I couldn't go through the window, I wouldn't be able to walk through that either. "Kate is many things to me," Henry said finally, "but she is not you." I sank to the floor and hugged my knees. I'd done so well, fooling myself that this might work, that with time and a little effort everything would be okay, but it couldn't be. Would he have said those things if he'd known there was a chance I might be listening? Of course not. He wasn't cruel, but I'd heard them anyway. "Hades." Persephone leaned forward and closed the gap between them, touching her lips to his. My stomach lurched, and I hid my face in my hands. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't a nightmare. Not the real thing. I'd fallen asleep without remembering, that was all. I would wake up soon, and when I did, Henry would be watching me sleep, and he would apologize for storming off. We would talk, and he would kiss me, and everything would be all right again. I didn't know how long it lasted. I didn't want to know, and by the time Persephone spoke again, I was all but tearing my hair out. Why couldn't I go back? What part of me wanted to see this so badly that I was willing to put myself through this kind of agony? "The thing is, I'm not me either," she said softly. "I'm not the person you love. That person never existed. And turning me into her in your mind, it's destroying you. We had one good day together, and the rest of it was awful. I was miserable, and by the time I knew I didn't want to be married to you anymore, you'd convinced yourself that you were in love with me. But you never were. You fell in love with the person who never existed." Tears splashed on the knees of my jeans. In a fit of desperation, I pinched the inside of my elbow hard but felt no pain. I was stuck. "Tell me," said Persephone, "was that the kind of kiss you'd spent the past 1,000 years imagining? Did your heart stop? Did the room spin, and did everything else fade away?" In the time it took for Henry to respond, I stopped breathing and lifted my head. Persephone was still in his lap, and they watched each other with such intensity that I expected him to kiss her again, but then I saw it. There was a distance between them now, as if she were pulling away, as if he were holding her at arm's length. As the seconds ticked by, a sliver of hope lodged itself inside of me, and I stood shakily to move closer so there would be no chance of me missing what he would say. Except, as I stepped forward, he leaned forward toward her again, and she didn't stop him. My breath caught in my throat as the world dissolved around me once more, and Henry and Persephone disappeared. I spent the rest of the night crying in bed with Pogo curled up at my side. Every half hour or so he would wake up long enough to lick my cheeks before falling back asleep. I wasn't so lucky. Whatever lesson Persephone tried to teach Henry backfired, and even if she left the palace now, that wouldn't change the fact that Henry would always love her more. I wanted to hate her for what she'd done, but she hadn't been the one to burst into our marriage. I was the one who'd sought her out, and I had convinced her to re-enter her old life, despite knowing full well the consequences of Henry seeing her again might be. All she'd done was try to discourage his feelings in a twisted way that had failed so miserably, but she had tried, and now I lost him completely. The sound of the bedroom door opening woke me up from a light doze. Pogo stretched, and when I sat up, he flopped down in my lap, belly up, apparently unwilling to let me go anywhere without him again. Henry stood in the doorway, and for a long moment we simply stared at each other. His ageless face was drawn, and his lips turned down in a frown, and he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Finally, he stepped inside the room and shut the door. Without coming to greet me, he headed to his closet and began to sort through his clothes. I wiped my cheeks to make sure no evidence of my crying session remained, but they'd been dry for hours. Once he picked out a fresh shirt that was indistinguishable from the one he wore. I expected him to say something, but he wordlessly disappeared into the bathroom as if I weren't even there. Did he think so little of me that I wasn't worth a hello? While he was gone, I debated whether or not to continue pretending that everything was all right. The coward in me wanted to, but I knew that if I tried, I would be as miserable as Persephone had been, and I didn't want to be miserable anymore. I couldn't spend my life waiting for him to set Persephone aside and focus on me instead. By the time he came out, I knew what I had to say. Everything inside of me fought against the words that spilled out of my mouth, but I needed to say it, and Henry needed to hear it. I can't do this anymore. My voice was barely a whisper. But Henry stopped halfway between bathroom and the door. He didn't look at me, and his hands formed fists, and the cords in his neck stood out like they had in the room and the windows. Self-loathing washed over me. I was doing the same thing Persephone had done to him. I was giving up before we'd even had a chance. I was declaring it over. No, Henry was the one who had given up. He was the one who had declared it over the moment he refused to touch me or treat me like his wife. He was the one who had lost us somewhere. I was only giving up the search as well. There was nothing I could do, no magical words I could say to fix everything. He'd already abandoned us. Cannot do what exactly, said Henry, and I heard the strain in each word he spoke, as if it took monumental effort for him to form them. My palms were sweaty, and more than anything I wanted to take it back and apologize and beg him to talk to me, so we could figure this out, but he wasn't going to do that. Even if he did, tomorrow things would go back to this, and neither of us would ever be happy again. I couldn't do that to him. I couldn't do that to me. This, I said softly, us, last year before we were married, I thought now would be perfect, and that I would be happier than I'd ever been in my life, getting to be with you, getting to love you for the rest of eternity, but no matter how much I want to love you, you won't let me, and I can't do this anymore. Henry didn't move. I wanted him to come over to the bed to take my hand and tell me he was sorry, that he'd try harder, but he didn't. He stared at the door and said, May I ask what precipitated this decision? There it was, the elephant in the room, the thing I wasn't supposed to see, the thing that changed everything. You kissed Persephone. At once several emotions passed over his face. Shock, shame, humiliation, anger, pain, relief, yes, relief as well. I did not expect her to tell you, I am sorry. Dead silence. Out of all the things I thought he might say, that had never crossed my mind. That's your response? I blurted. That you're sorry? I found out. Persephone didn't tell me, Henry. It was a so-called gift. I was in the room with you. I saw every second of it. I heard every single word you said to her. I watched you do it. I blinked rapidly to stop myself from tearing up again, but I was fighting a losing battle. He didn't care. He wasn't even going to pretend he'd done something wrong. You know what James told me at the end of summer? He said I had a choice, and he was the only one who was going to tell me about it, because everyone else was so concerned with your happiness that they didn't give about mine. I told him I'd already made a choice when I married you, but you kept insisting I wait. I didn't understand what he meant, but now I do. James, his name was twisted and ugly on Henry's lips. Yes, of course he would fool you into second-guessing yourself, for purely selfless reasons, I am certain. I'm not second-guessing myself, I snapped. I'm second-guessing you. I've given you every chance in the world to show me that you want me here, and you've given me nothing. You run off whenever you think you're going to be in the same room alone with me for more than 2 minutes at a time. You don't touch me, you barely talk to me, you haven't so much as kissed me since I got here, let alone treat me like a wife, like your equal. James warned me that you'd do something like this, and I was stupid enough to insist he was wrong. Throwing James in his face again and again was cruel, but I couldn't stop myself. Out of all the people in my life besides my mother, Henry was the one who was supposed to understand and know me best, not James. Then perhaps I should leave you and James be, said Henry, and the thunder in his voice gave me goosebumps. Is that what you want, Kate, my permission to be with him? You have it, for spring and summer. You may do whatever you wish with whomever you wish. And what about fall and winter? Am I supposed to sit pretty and wait for the day you decide to love me? I do love you. Then show me. I am trying, he said sharply. My apologies, if it is not good enough for you. I rolled my eyes. Doing nothing is never going to be good enough, Henry. Right now, from where I'm sitting, it looks like the last thing you want to be is my husband. You can say you love me all you want, but if you only ever act like the opposite is true, then I can't trust your words anymore. My voice cracked. Is this what it's going to be like forever? Tell me now. Save the mystery. If you're never going to look at me the way you look at Persephone, I cannot simply stop feeling something for her, said Henry through clenched teeth. She was part of my life for a very long time. I know. I know you love her. I'm not asking you to forget she ever existed. I'm asking you to put her in the past where she belongs and live your future with me, not a ghost. Henry's throat constricted. That is what I am trying to do. But you're not. I ran my fingers through my hair, frustration building up inside of me. Henry, you kissed her. She kissed me. It doesn't matter. I slammed my hand down on the mattress, and Pogo scurried underneath my pillow. Don't you get that? You wanted it. You enjoyed it. You wanted more once it was over. And everything she was trying to show you, she doesn't love you anymore. Don't you get that? I do. I love you and you're going to lose me because you're too afraid or too uninterested or I don't know. I don't know why you won't let me love you the way I want to. I waited for Henry to say something, anything to help me understand, but he was silent. Wildly, I searched through every excuse I'd made for him since arriving, every possibility that had occurred to me. Anything that would explain the man I'd loved turning into a stranger. The thing he'd said to Persephone, the reason he'd bolted from the throne room that afternoon. Is it because you think Calliope's going to kill me the moment you let yourself feel something real for me? Because I'm immortal now, Henry. She can't kill me anymore. Cronus can. The words came out so choked that I hardly understood them, but there it was, his excuse. I softened. Cronus didn't. I slid to the edge of the bed, close enough for him to reach me in 2 steps, but he stayed put. He hunted us down, and when he had the chance to kill me, he didn't. Finally, Henry looked at me, his eyes glittering with confusion, but I kept going. If I let him change the subject, I would never be able to finish this. You don't need to spend every waking moment protecting me now. I'm supposed to be your partner, you're not your burden. And if that's all I'm ever going to be to you, then I don't want to be here anymore. I want you to love me. I want to look forward to coming here every fall. I want winter to be my favorite season because I get to spend it with you. So tell me what's going to happen, Henry. Tell me things are going to be better, that you're not going to think of Persephone every time you touch me. Tell me that you're going to love me as much as you love her, and that I won't spend the rest of eternity paling in comparison to your memories of my sister. Silence. Please, I whispered. I'm begging you. If you don't, I'm going to leave, and I don't mean for the summer. I'm going to leave the underworld, and I won't come back. He flinched, and I instantly knew I'd said the wrong words, but I couldn't take them back now. Perhaps that is best, he said. You will be safer on the surface, and the others can protect you. I don't need protecting. I was crying in earnest now, and my throat was thick and my voice strangled, but I kept going. I need to know I'm not going to be miserable for the rest of my life. I should not be your only source of happiness, said Henry stiffly. If that is so, it isn't. You're not. I have my mother and Ava and James, he finished for me, and I wanted to tell him he was wrong, but I didn't want to lie to him. James was my best friend. Yes, I am aware. I will not give you an excuse to leave if you wish to do so. Then there is the door. I am sure James will be happy to have you all to himself. Now, if you will excuse me, I have preparations to make. I opened my mouth to tell him where he could shove his assumptions, but his last words caught me off guard. Preparations for what? What's so important that you have to leave when we're in the middle of this? My apologies, he said coolly. I thought you had already made your decision to abandon me. I snatched a pillow from behind me and hurled it at him. Without moving an inch, he deflected it before it was halfway to him. You're a jerk, I snapped. If this is how you treated Persephone, then you know what? I don't blame her for leaving you. In fact, she was an idiot for waiting for so long. Unspeakable agony flashed across Henry's face, and I clapped my hand over my mouth the moment I realized what I'd said. Oh, God, I'm sorry, I didn't. Yes, you did, he said. You meant every word. I buried my face in my hands and stifled a hiccuping sob. My lungs burned, and all I wanted to do was curl up on the bed and cry, but I couldn't. Not when Henry was here. Not when he was finally talking to me. I hate this, I whispered. I hate fighting with you. I'm not asking for the moon and stars, I promise. I just want you to love me, to want me, to spend time with me, to talk to me, and you expect to achieve that by behaving like this? He said. You believe that saying such things to me will somehow make me forget the eons I have already lived? As opposed to what? Not saying anything at all? I've tried giving you time. I've tried risking my life to save yours. I've tried everything I can think of, but you won't even talk to me. Henry. I looked up at the sound of Walter's voice. He stuck his head in the door, and as he focused on Henry, he pointedly ignored me. I wasn't sure whether to be grateful or offended. We are about to begin, he said, and Henry nodded tersely. As soon as the door shut, Henry released a breath as if he'd been holding it for centuries. We may continue this later if you wish, but I must go now. We are planning for the battle. He hesitated. Titans are the strongest on the solstices, and we expect Cronus will escape completely sometime in late December, so there is not much time. I closed my eyes. If I hadn't been stupid enough to sneak into the cavern, Persephone would have handled things. None of this would have been happening. Would you mind if I took a day or two before I left? I want to say goodbye to everyone. At first Henry said nothing, but finally he nodded. Take as long as you need. He was halfway out the door when I blurted, Can I visit you sometime? In the moment it took him to turn to face me again, I thought I saw a hint of a smile, but it was gone before I could be sure. Whatever happens between us, Kate, I will always want to be your friend. He paused. It is more than I have had before. More than what Persephone had given him. That brought me a small amount of comfort, though the distance in his voice kept me from smiling. I'll come to see you sometime. Then I will do what I can to ensure that you will not come back to an empty palace. What? He thought he wasn't coming back? Or was he going to fade? Die in battle with Cronus? Did it even matter? Henry, what are you? Before I could finish, thunder rumbled in the room. Henry blinked out of sight, leaving me alone with fear and questions and no answers. I hurried to the door and threw it open, hoping in vain he'd be there, but I was alone. It was over. Okay. Chapter 16. Battlefield. Henry didn't come back after the meeting ended. I stayed in our bedroom all day as I waited for him, preparing what I was going to say over and over again in my head, but nothing sounded right. Demanding things I wanted from him, needed from him, wouldn't fix anything. He had to decide to change, to work on this with me, to treat me like an equal, and do whatever it took to keep our relationship alive. I couldn't do it for him. No amount of pressure was going to help. If anything, it would drive him away. However, short of a miracle, I was leaving. I'd set aside the clothes I was going to bring with me, and all day I thought about what I was going to do and where I was going to go. I didn't know anyone else on the surface, and I had no idea how the others lived. Did they have homes like Henry did? Did Mount Olympus really exist? Did they have mortals they loved and stopped to see every few years? Part of the reason I wanted to delay my trip was to give Henry the chance to realize what had gone wrong between us, along with the opportunity to fix it. We wouldn't be perfect in a day, I knew that, but there was a chance he would try. In the end, that was all I really wanted. However, the other reason I was delaying was simply because I didn't know what to do. I could ask my mother, I supposed, or James, or Ava, but they were planning their strategy to survive a battle with a Titan, and the last thing they needed was something else to worry about. I wasn't going to abandon the council and walk away from my immortal life, but I didn't know where to go or how to get there, and now that was a good enough excuse to stay put. The day passed slowly. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, I held my breath and waited for the door to open, but it was never Henry. My mother checked on me twice, once after meeting to tell me that she would be scarce while helping the others set the trap for Cronus, and the second time to wish me good night. With each hour that passed, my heart sank a little more, and finally I gave up hope of seeing Henry that night. I wasn't tired, but Pogo was. He curled up on the pillow beside me and snored while I stared up at the ceiling and tried to picture how this would end. Would Henry say goodbye? Would he really want me to visit him? Would the other gods ignore me? My mother wouldn't, and I wouldn't count on seeing Ava whenever she grew bored or lonely, but the others, even James, I wasn't sure about, unless he decided to pursue me once I was no longer married. Would I let him? I didn't know, and I hated myself for uncertainty. For even thinking about Henry like that, whether we were still together or not. Well past midnight, the crushing weight of reality set in. Once I left the underworld, I would likely never see Henry again. I wouldn't be in this realm and easily accessible like Persephone was. I was certain he would never come looking for me. No matter how many promises he made to allow me to visit, the best I could hope for was seeing him at council meetings if he didn't decide to fade away. I sobbed softly into my pillow. Everything I'd done since first entering Eden Manor had been to prevent this from happening. I'd done everything I could to save my mother and Ava from death before I'd known they were goddesses, but while I'd failed them both, I hadn't failed Henry. He still existed because of me, because I loved him, because I'd married him and agreed to rule the underworld with him, and now I was taking that away from him. I wanted to stay. He needed me to stay. But I couldn't live like this anymore. He had to understand he wanted to fade when Persephone had left him. He'd only stayed after the 11th girl had died because the council had asked him for one more try. But he wasn't asking me. He told me to go, and so I would. In the middle of the night I heard another set of footsteps, and this time there was no knock before the door opened and closed. I pushed myself up on my elbows and squinted through the darkness. Henry, I said, stunned. He'd come back half a day after he'd said he would, but I wasn't going to be picky. He removed his shoes and set them in his closet. I'm sorry for disturbing you. Go back to sleep. I couldn't very well go back to sleep when I hadn't been sleeping in the first place, but I bit my tongue and watched, certain he'd leave for another bedroom once he was done. He changed into silk pajama pants, and as he walked around the bed to his side, my heart hammered. He was going to sleep in here after all. Is it too warm? He said as he settled in. You are not underneath the sheets. He seemed to be keeping as much distance between us as possible in the massive bed. Whether it was because he didn't want to be near me or because he wanted to give me space, I didn't know. I wasn't sleeping, I said. Is everything with the council okay? As good as things can be at this stage. We have all decided that our rules will be, and we have set a timetable from now until the winter solstice. It was still nearly 2 months away, but with all the preparation they had to do, what if it wasn't enough time? Long did it take to build a trap that would hold a titan? Was there anything I could do to help? I thought you were leaving. If there's something I can do around here, then I don't have to go right away. There is something. He turned on his side, facing away from me. Stay out of trouble. Let me know if anything suspicious happens, and do not visit Calliope. Other than that, if there is anything specific, I will be sure to let you know. I sank down on the bed until my head touched the pillow. I didn't bother getting under the blankets. All right, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. Was that all I was to him now? A burden to be closely watched so I didn't get myself into more trouble? Then it'll make no difference to you if I leave sooner rather than later. He was silent. The minutes ticked by, and I stared into the darkness, searching for something to say to him. Anything that would help him understand I wanted to stay, but not like this, not when he didn't want me here. James and I were never together, I said quietly. Whatever you think happened in Greece, it didn't. We went as friends, and that's all we were. I waited for you to show up. I looked for you everywhere we went because I was so sure you'd surprise me, and when you didn't, it hurt. It was like you didn't want to see me at all. I reached for his hand, but at the last second I pulled back. I couldn't handle his physical rejection on top of everything else now. I'm not leaving you for him. I'm not leaving you for anybody, and I never would have gone looking for something better. You are my something better, and I wish I was yours too. Resounding the silence filled the room. My heart raced as I waited for him to say something, anything in return. But when he didn't so much as look at me, disappointment crushed any hope I had left. I turned away from him and buried my face in the pillow. Struggled to convincing myself that he was tired and had fallen asleep before I'd said a word. I'd waited too long to start, and I couldn't blame him for that. I would have had to make an effort to repeat it in the morning, and if that failed, then at least I would leave knowing I had done everything I could. Good night, I whispered and closed my eyes, certain sleep wouldn't come any time soon. Even if it did, all my dreams would be nightmares filled with Calliope and the moment Persephone had kissed Henry, and nothing was worth reliving that. I'd wait until I was so exhausted that I wouldn't dream at all. Without the blankets, the room was cold and I shivered. The mattress shifted under me, and Henry wrapped his arm around me and pressed his chest against my back. He was warm. His hand searched until he found mine. Please don't leave, he said, and his lips brushed my neck. I trembled again, but this time for an entirely different reason. For the rest of the night, neither of us said another word. I stayed. As the weeks passed, we didn't talk about anything I'd said to Henry or anything he'd said to me. Sometimes he didn't come back at night, but those were the days when he would reappear exhausted the next morning, and I let myself assume that he was working. We acted friendly toward one another during the few minutes a day we saw each other, but that was all we were. At night, I waited for him before I went to bed, and when he crawled in, he embraced me without a word. He never kissed me, and he never apologized, but he wanted me to stay, and that was enough for now. I made myself scarce as the others prepared for war. I explored the palace, finding each room more or less exactly where it had been in Eden, which made things both easy and dull. One day I attempted to figure out how many rooms there were, but after losing count twice, I stopped. Sometimes James or Ava found me, and we would spend the day together talking about nothing in particular and pretending they didn't look terrible. The upcoming battle was already taking its toll on everyone, but whenever I brought it up, they assured me that they'd been through worse. I avoided Persephone like the plague, and I didn't bother to hide it. Whenever she entered a room, I walked out, usually with a ready-made excuse. On the few occasions I was forced to be near her without escape, I kept my head down and stayed quiet, and she never said a word to me. If she felt guilty or if she thought she'd done the right thing, I didn't want to hear about it. Despite how useless I felt, I did get some satisfaction in knowing that at least I wasn't burdening anyone. I read, explored, and kept my word to Henry. I also spent countless hours struggling to harness my ability. Twice I managed flashes, but it was never in the right place. When I wanted to go to Cronus's cavern, I wound up at Persephone's cottage, where Adonis tended the flowers as he waited for her to return. And when I wanted to see what was going on in the meeting, I wound up in the room full of windows again, the one where Henry had kissed Persephone, or Persephone had kissed Henry, it didn't matter. Other than that, I had no success. Whatever step I was missing, I couldn't figure it out, and despite my mother's insistence that I would get it eventually, I felt like a failure. No wonder the others didn't want me helping out in battle. I wouldn't want to help either. I wouldn't want me to help either. The closer we got to the winter solstice, the more anxious I became, whether or not anyone was saying it aloud. All of these preparations were my fault. I'd put Henry in a position where he'd been forced to open the gate. If anything happened to them, it would be on me, and I couldn't bear that guilt. Ingrid was the only other thing that Henry and I fought about. He didn't want me to go anywhere near Cronus's prison, and I insisted on keeping my promise to see her. Finally, we compromised, and Henry brought Ingrid to the palace for an afternoon the week before the solstice. While the others were in the midst of preparing, Ingrid and I wandered through the jeweled gardens which extended to the edge of the black river that ran through the stone walls on either end of the monstrous cavern. The river Styx. I was so close to living here forever, said Ingrid with a sigh, and we made ourselves comfortable under a golden tree with rubies the size of apples hanging from its branches. You're so lucky. I wouldn't call it luck, I said, digging my toes into the black sand. More like nepotism. She laughed, and as she settled beside the trunk of the golden tree, I picked one of the rubies and sniffed it. Nothing. If Henry could create these beautiful jewels, why couldn't he at least give them the illusion of having a scent? I kept the flowers he'd left for me in the underworld in a crystal bowl in the middle of the closet, and even after all this time, they still smelled like candy. Then again, they were real, sort of. I hesitated. What would you have done if Henry never loved you as much as you wanted him to? We can't choose how much someone loves us, said Ingrid as she dipped a toe in the river and shivered. He picked me for the test because he thought he'd come to love me like that in time. He wouldn't have picked you if he didn't think the same, you know. It doesn't feel that way, I mumbled, and when Ingrid pressed me, I told her everything that had happened since we'd returned from Cronus's cavern. The fight we'd had, what he'd said to me, how he told me to leave, and then changed his mind when he found out that James and I hadn't done anything after all. How we'd been cordial since then, but hardly husband and wife. How afraid I was that we never would be. By the time I was done, Ingrid had her arm around me, and I stared at the jewel in my hand as if it held the answers to every question I'd ever had. I met Henry when I was 7, she said as she toyed with a lock of my hair. It was the early 20th century, and my parents were German immigrants. We didn't have any other family in America, so after they died, I lived in an orphanage in New York City. I grew up in New York, too, I said faintly, and Ingrid smiled. I think Henry has a weakness for New Yorkers, she said. And girls without much family. I think he feels like it'd be easier for us to love him if we're already lonely. I shook my head. She was right, of course, but that didn't make it any easier to remember how much Henry hated himself. I could have had a huge family back in the city and loved him all the same. Try telling him that, said Ingrid wryly. He's always been that way, you know, convinced he isn't worthy of being loved even though I grew up with him. We used to take walks together. He isn't in this form. I mean, he looked like a boy around my age, and for a long time I thought he was. He was my best friend. We used to wander the streets together, and we'd talk about everything, steal apples from the merchants, and get into so much trouble. The skin around her eyes wrinkled with happiness. He made my miserable life worthwhile. He told me who he really was the day I left the orphanage, and he took me to his home in the forest. It was beautiful. You've been there? I nodded. Eden Manor. It was the first real home I'd had since my parents died. Ingrid took my hand and threaded her slim fingers through mine. Her bones felt brittle like a bird's, as if squeezing too hard would break them. He told me about Persephone, and he told me that while she was his past, he wanted me to be his future. She shook her head. It's such a ridiculous thing to remember, but I do, and every time he comes to visit me, I think about that and how he wasn't just saying it because he thought I needed to hear it. He loved all of us in his own way, Kate. Me and the others who died. You. But look at how many of us he's lost. Look at what he went through with Persephone. He thinks he's responsible for all of it, you know, and that guilt isn't going to go away overnight. Can you blame him for holding back? I swallowed. No, I couldn't. And I'd had no idea I'd loved the other girls like he'd claimed to love me. All of that loss, everything I'd gone through with my mother a dozen times over, but Henry didn't have cancer to blame. You should have passed, I said softly. It sounds like you two would have been really happy together. Probably, Ingrid's smile faded as she focused on the running water, but I didn't, and there's no going back now. I want him to be happy, Kate. Me too, I mumbled. I'm trying, I really am, but it feels like he doesn't want me. He's hurting. Henry's never been very good with expressing his emotions, and sometimes that takes patience. Not that I think you don't have patience, she said quickly, only that he takes more than the usual amount. I'm staying, I said, for now at least, but I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to fix this. What if it doesn't need fixing? Ingrid focused on me, her green eyes wide. What if it's already perfect underneath the surface and the surface isn't what's getting in the way? I blinked. I don't understand. You think the problem is that Henry doesn't love you, said Ingrid, and I shrugged, but I'm telling you, everyone's told you that he does. So you have two choices. Either accept that you're wrong and let Henry love you in his own way, or force both of you to be miserable until you realize he loves you anyway. I snorted. That doesn't sound like much of a choice. Of course it is. You can choose to be happy, or you can choose to be miserable, and that's completely within your power. Henry doesn't have to do a thing. And what if you're wrong? I said. Or what if you're overestimating how he feels? Then you'll give Henry the chance to really fall in love with you, Ingrid beamed. That'd be fun too, wouldn't it? I ran my fingertips across the cold surface of the ruby. It was even shaped like an apple. He's busy with the battle, they all are. Not for much longer, though. And you can either make excuses or you can suck it up and see things from his perspective. And you'll both be happier for it. You don't have to do anything differently. Just think about what he's going through and you be yourself and let both of you have the chance to be happy. Everything else will fall into place. I was silent. That was what I had been trying to do, but nothing had changed. That night we'd spent together in Eden Manor, aphrodisiac or no, my desire to be with him had been all-consuming, and it was the first honest thing I'd let myself feel since I'd arrived at the Manor. The passion was real, and the way he'd kissed me, I'd been so sure it was real for him too. I wanted that back. I wanted those kisses, those touches, the way he'd looked at me. I wanted to be that person to him again. What do you think would happen if I just walked up to him and kissed him? I said, and Ingrid laughed. I think he'd let you. What if he's waiting for you to do that, Kate? What if he's waiting for a sign that the same way you are, and you're both circling each other, waiting, waiting, waiting? But I guess one of us better get a move on, I muttered, and Ingrid hugged me. That's my girl. I would have been better at this if he'd helped. If he told me what he was feeling instead of leaving it to my imagination, but I tried anyway. From that afternoon on, instead of worrying about the moments of silence between us, I watched him. He wasn't floundering or something to say or ignoring me. His eyes were distant and his brow furrowed, and I finally let myself admit that it wasn't because of me. It was the battle. Calliope, Cronus, anything but me. Because with me, at least, he smiled. And instead of focusing on every time he didn't touch me, I burned into my memory every time he did. His arm around me as he slept, the brush of his fingertip against my cheek, even the way he looked at me after a particularly long day. He didn't kiss me, he didn't hug me, he didn't tell me he loved me again, but eventually I let myself hope that he did anyway. He was trying in his own way, and that had to be enough for now, because if it wasn't, we had both been miserable, and he didn't deserve that, either did I. As the final week before the solstice passed, I waited for the opportunity to do as I'd promised and kiss him properly, but Henry spent more and more time locked in meetings with the other council members, and by the time he came to bed he collapsed with little more than good night. I hadn't realized he could get tired, and when I asked my mother during the few minutes a day I got to see her, her answer was succinct. We don't grow tired during normal human things. It's when we use our powers that we drain ourselves. That explained why I didn't seem to need sleep anymore, though when Henry was with me I managed. He needed more than he allowed. Sorry, I have to do something. That explained why I didn't seem to need sleep anymore, though when Henry was with me I managed. He needed more than he allowed himself to get, and I refused to wake him early or keep him up late no matter how badly I wanted him to know how I felt. Now wasn't the time, and it wouldn't be until after the battle. If there was even an after the battle at all, I didn't let myself think about that part. He had to survive. There was no other option. If Cronus hadn't killed him in the cavern, he would kill him now. He wouldn't kill any of the gods. I had to believe that everything would be okay. In the hours before the winter solstice, the council gathered, their thrones forming a circle that aligned with the black and white diamond ones for Henry and me. I was hesitant to take mine since I'd had nothing to do with planning the battle and wasn't going to participate, but Henry insisted. Before meeting again, Persephone perched on the arm of our mother's chair as if she'd done it 1,000 times before. She eyed me, and I fidgeted when I realized Then my throne was probably belonged to her when she'd been a queen. Perfect. Brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, said Walter. He looked around the room gravely, taking time to examine each face, and he skipped to Calliope's empty throne as if it wasn't there. We have spent months anticipating this night, and finally it is here. Henry sat rigidly, his chin raised and his expression blank. The bags under his eyes were purple, as bad as my mother's had been in their final year of life, and the lines on his face were deeper than they'd ever been before. Dread coursed through me, and I forced myself not to think of the possibility that he'd collapse in battle and die anyway. I should have given him more time to sleep. I should have insisted on another room so I wouldn't interrupt him. I should have done other things that I hadn't, things Ingrid and Persephone would have thought of. Our enemy is strong, there is no denying that, said Walter, but we have beaten him once, and I am confident that we will succeed again. The corner of Henry's mouth twitched. Walter was lying. Even if I knew the chances of them succeeding without Calliope were low, and she was locked in a room deep inside the palace, the uncooperative after all this time. Whatever she had done during the First War had been the linchpin in securing their victory, and without her, every single one of them was planning for defeat. All I could hope for was that they wouldn't push themselves past the point of no return. I would like to propose a toast, said Walter, and beside him, Xander gestured. Wine glasses appeared in front of each of us, floating in midair. To everyone here with my deepest love and affection, whatever happens tonight, I know that I am proud of each of you. We are family, and none of you will be forgotten. Nausea washed over me, and it was all I could do to murmur along with the others and take a sip of wine. They were preparing to die after all. Maybe not all of them, but the possibility made me dizzy with dread. If even one of them didn't come back, I couldn't live with that sort of guilt. No one said a word after that. They all sat in silence and watched the clock tick closer and closer to midnight, and I stared at the faces of everyone around me. My mother, Henry, Ava, James. They would all be risking their lives. Selfishly, I wondered what would happen to me if none of them survived. Would I remain in the palace with no sure way to return to the surface, or would Cronus come after me to finish the job? If I was the only one left, I hoped he would. Just before the clock struck midnight, Henry reached over to take my hand. His skin was warm, and unlike mine, his palm was dry. For a second his grip tightened, and horror snaked through me. Was he saying goodbye? Please come back, I whispered so only he could hear me. He nodded once, such a small gesture that I wondered if I'd imagined it. He let go. Henry stood, and so did the others. Across the circle, Ava held hands with Nicholas, and I looked away. I'd known the council for a year. They'd known each other since the dawn of humanity, and everything I was feeling was inconsequential compared to what they were going through. As the clock chimed, Henry stepped into the center of the circle, and the others joined him. My mother gave me a sad smile, and I raised my hand in a silent goodbye. When the 12th chime rang, they were gone. I sank against the arm of my throne, my face buried in my hands as great hiccuping sobs escaped me. Overwhelmed with helplessness, I pushed my mind toward battle and struggled to see them. I had to know what was happening. Someone touched my shoulder, and I jumped, nearly tripping off the platform. My vision was blurry, but I made out a blonde with her hands on her hips, and for one terrifying moment I thought it was Calliope. It would serve me right for her to kill me now while the others were away. It'll be okay, she said, and I let out an audible sigh of relief when I recognized Ava's voice. I wiped my eyes on my sleeves, and slowly she came into focus. Ava? My face grew hot when I realized she must have seen me break down like that. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be with the others? Someone had to make sure you didn't run after us again, she said, and even though she was joking, her words sucker-punched me. Besides, I've never been good at fighting. I'm more of a make-love, not war kind of person. Come here, you're a mess. How did you manage this in 30 seconds? A handkerchief appeared out of nowhere, and I let her wipe my cheeks and nose. It was such a motherly thing to do that my eyes filled with tears all over again, and she rubbed my back comfortingly. Let's sit, shall we? She led me over to one of the cushioned pews, avoiding the thrones altogether. Don't worry so much. They're all really good at what they do, and they've got a great plan. They'll be back before you know it, I promise. Her reassurance was nice, but she had no way of knowing, and I couldn't swallow false hope. If anything happens, it'll be my fault, I said between sniffs. I'm the one who caused this. Oh, Kate, Ava hugged me. Don't tell me you really think that. Of course this isn't your fault. The only person to blame is Calliope, and by that time we're done with her. She'll never do anything bad to anyone, ever again. They can't defeat Cronus without her, though, I said. What if he kills them? Walter? He said, Daddy likes being dramatic, said Ava, and as badly as I wanted to believe her, I couldn't. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but none of them will let anything bad happen to the others. What kind of family would we be if we did? I didn't have an answer for that. Bad things happened. No amount of love could fix that. If it could, my mother would have never suffered through cancer. I closed my eyes and made myself relax, hoping that for once my gift would cooperate and I could see what was going on. No matter what kind of pain I'd witness without being able to help, it would be infinitely better than sitting here waiting, and I was sure of it. Are you trying to see them? Said Ava, breaking my concentration. I opened my eyes and nodded. There was no point lying about it. Don't, sweetie, she said, taking my hand and sandwiching it between hers. You don't want to see that. A lump formed in my throat. I just can't sit here and wait, I said, my voice breaking. How can you be so calm when they could die? I'm calm because I know what to expect, she said. Even if you could get your power to work, you're so used to how mortals fight that you wouldn't understand what's going on anyway. Henry's going to need you when he gets back, and you don't want to drain yourself by watching. I stared down at the marble floor. No matter what Ingrid said, no matter how Henry acted toward me, the fact remained that Persephone was beside him in battle, and if something happened to one of his siblings, he wouldn't come to me with his pain. He'll have Persephone. Ava snorted. Oh, please, the moment she gets the chance, she'll go running back to Adonis. I'm not so sure about that. I hesitated. She kissed him. What? Who? Persephone, I said. She kissed Henry. When? Said Ava in disbelief. She hates him. Why would she possibly? She was trying to prove to him that their relationship was all in his imagination. I leaned my head against the pew. It was the night we got back. They were alone together in his room with a bunch of windows, and he was sitting, and she climbed into his lap. They talked a little, and she kissed him. I didn't want to see it, I added, in case she thought I was purposefully spying on them. I couldn't control it, but I saw it clear as day. It was just a peck. It wasn't just a peck, either, and I know Henry enjoyed it. Yeah, he probably did, said Ava, and she must have realized how completely unhelpful that was, because she quickly added, have things been better between you? I mean, how often are you two knocking boots? I frowned. What? You mean never? We haven't. Not at all. Not since that one time. How can you even? I stopped. Of course she would ask that sort of thing. She was Ava. He holds me at night, I guess, but we haven't even so much as kissed. Ava's jaw dropped open. Are you serious? My God, Kate, why didn't you come to me sooner? I tried to tell you, I said, bewildered. How had this suddenly come my fault? What would you have done anyway? Forced him to want me? I don't want it to happen that way, Ava. She rolled her eyes. Honestly, you think I'd do that? That's not what love's about, Kate. But I could have given him a nudge in the right direction without using my powers, she added when I glared at her. Someday you'll learn to trust me. Now that hag won't hang around forever, and what are you going to do when she's out of the way? I didn't like Persephone, but she was still my sister, and Ava's attitude toward her grated at me. Why do you hate each other? I said. I get that you liked Adonis too. But don't you have enough toys? You've seen Adonis, said Ava with a cheeky little smile. Would you call him just another toy? No, but exactly. I saw him first and she stole him from me, plain and simple. You can even ask Daddy. I don't want to ask Walter, I said sharply. Shouldn't Adonis get a say in this? Ava stuck her lower lip out in a pout. He wanted both of us. That's why Persephone gave up her immortality, you know. She wanted to have him in the underworld all to herself instead of having to share him with me. And all the while Henry had had to watch as his wife fought Ava for the right to be with a mortal. Persephone had done the right thing leaving him, but for Henry's sake I wished she'd left him before fooling around behind his back or in front of it. I don't know what I'm going to do when she's gone, I said, but as long as he wants me to stay, and as long as he's working on making us better, I'm not going to abandon him like she did. I know you won't, said Ava, leaning her head on my shoulder. That's part of the reason we chose you, you know. Well, yeah, well, that's about the only thing I have going for me. I'm useless. You've been immortal for 9 months. Give yourself some time before you decide you were wrong. We weren't, by the way, she added, just in case you decide to challenge that. I hesitated. I hadn't told anyone else, not even my mother, but I needed to tell Ava. If she really could help, then she had to know everything. I was going to leave him. Ava was silent, and when she finally spoke, she all but whispered, I know, I'm glad you didn't. I stared at her. You know? How? Henry told us, she said, right after you said you would. I hid my face in my hands, forcing myself to breathe steadily. Of course everyone knew. None of them could keep a secret to save their lives. No one tried to talk me out of it. Did you speak with Henry? Is that why I swallowed, my throat raw from my sobs. That's why he asked me to stay, isn't it? Of course not, said Ava. Kate, stop doing this to yourself. None of us said anything to Henry, and none of us talked to you about it because James insisted it was your choice. A knot formed in my throat, and I forced myself to speak around it. That night when Henry came back, I told him James and I weren't together, and then he asked me to stay. Really? Said Ava, brightening. Well, that's that, isn't it? What's that? She sighed. You're adorable. Clueless but adorable. Henry thought you wanted to be with James because you spent your summer with him. So he was giving you the chance to go. I'd known that, or at least I'd suspected it, but that didn't make it any easier to hear, though. But I don't want to be with James. And once he figured that out, he asked you to stay because that's what he really wants. Ava gave me a cheeky little smile. See, sometimes it isn't all that doom and gloom. I sniffed, and the weight of my chest lifted. You really think so? Ava pressed a noisy kiss to my cheek. I know so. Waiting was torture. Over the next several hours, we talked about everything and nothing. When we lapsed into silence, I tried again and again to see what was going on, but it never worked. Every time the clock chimed, I wondered who would be missing when the council returned, if any of them returned at all. Ava kept reassuring me that no news was good news, but how long before she would concede that something must have gone wrong? At 6:45, something prickled against the back of my neck. Ava and I leaned against each other, both half asleep, and I kept waking myself up every few minutes to see if they'd returned. When I cracked open an eye, I saw a strange mist around us, and for a moment I thought I was dreaming. And then I heard a giggle and a click of heels against marble, and my blood turned to ice. "Good morning," said Calliope as she rounded the corner to face us. "You two look cozy, don't you?" Without warning, the mist turned to fog and engulfed us. Chapter 17. Ash and Blood. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. "Oh, stop it," Calliope's voice whispered through the fog, echoing all around me. "There's no one here to help you anyway." I reached out for Ava, but she was gone. "What did you do with her?" I said, stumbling to my feet. My knees buckled, but I refused to give Calliope the satisfaction of seeing me fall. "You'll have her back soon enough," she said as she appeared out of the fog in front of me. "I told you Cronus would free me. Don't you love it when everything works out in the end?" Malevolent heat spread through me, the same I felt when facing Calliope after the brothers had captured her. "What do you want?" I growled, clawing at my abdomen. What was she doing to me? There had to be a way to stop it. "I already told you what I want," she said. "I'm going to hurt you the same way you hurt me. I'm going to take what you love most from you, and you'll be helpless to stop me." She patted me on the cheek, and where her fingers touched me, my skin burned. I slapped her hand away. "Where's Henry? What have you done to him?" "Nothing," she said, her eyes widening innocently. "Don't you trust me?" "Really, Kate, you must learn not to be so suspicious. You give yourself wrinkles. And you wouldn't want to spend an eternity looking like an old woman, would you?" The fog rumbled, and Calliope winked at me. "That reminded me, I have someone who wants to meet you." A dark-haired man appeared beside her, but he wasn't solid like she was. Instead, the fog seemed to ripple through him, as if they were one and the same. And then he stepped forward. I saw his eyes were made of the same gray that surrounded us. Cronus. "Kate, my darling," he murmured, his voice like quiet thunder. He brushed his fingertips against my cheek with a feather-light touch that reverberated throughout my entire body. I have so looked forward to this moment. He looked like Henry. That was the worst part. He was older, but the shape of his face, the color of his hair that hung to his shoulders, even the way he moved, everything about him reminded me of Henry. Was there a physical resemblance? Henry was the oldest of the brothers. Had he been created to look like Cronus, or was Cronus trying to look like him? Why would he do that? "Cronus," I said stiffly, clasping my shaking hands together, "what did you do with them?" "They're all quite safe, I assure you, my dear." Cronus smiled, and all the heat left my body. "Did you like my gifts?" "Gifts?" I stammered. "What gifts?" Cronus took my hands in his and drew mine apart with ease. He covered my empty palm. When he pulled away, I was cupping a gold and blue flower that smelled like candy. The looming fog seemed to close in around me, and all the air whooshed out of my lungs. It had been Cronus all along. "But why? You don't even—" "I'm not—" He leaned toward me, his lips brushing my cheek, and my mind went strangely blank, as if it too were full of fog. "I can give you everything you've ever wanted, my darling," he murmured, and his words washed over me, warm and inviting as they burrowed so deeply inside my mind that I couldn't shake them. "A home, a family, and I would love you so much more than you ever could. You would never be second best for me. You could be my eternity." As he spoke, Calliope disappeared, leaving us together in the cocoon of fog. My eyes felt shut, and I swayed as my body screamed for me to get away from him. Some part of me didn't want to, though. He was telling the truth, of course he was. He would love me forever, and the way he said my name, the way he curled up inside of me. "Come with me, my dear," he whispered. "Give me your hand, and I will take you far away from here, some place as exquisite as you are, where you can see the sky, where you will never lack for love." I exhaled. It would be so simple, an eternity in the sun with someone who loved me. What more was there to life? My hand was half an inch from his when the wave of power pushed me back into the pew. Cronus growled and spun around to face an enemy I couldn't see, and I struggled to stand, but that same force held me down. A silhouette stepped toward us, and another wave of pure power ripped through the throne room. "I'm only going to warn you once, Cronus," said a voice, dark and dangerous. "Get the hell away from my wife." I gasped like I was surfacing after spinning too long underwater, and the fog around me disappeared. Dazed, I doubled over, heaps twisting inside of me, as if I'd been punched in the gut. But it wasn't Cronus and the strange power he'd had over me. It was Calliope, and this time whatever she'd done had worked. "Henry," I choked, and he knelt beside me. "I'm sorry, Cronus, I didn't mean, and Calliope, she escaped." He gathered me up in his arms and gently set me down on the pew. "Calm down, you did nothing wrong. How do you feel?" I stared at him in those eyes that shined like moonlight, and for one terrifying second I felt nothing. No love, no pain at the way Persephone consumed him. Just emptiness. And then it crashed through me, throwing everything off balance for the space of several heartbeats. How had Cronus done that? How had he made me not love Henry, if only for a few moments? I threw my arms around him and buried my face in his shoulder, hanging on for dear life. Once again it was Calliope, not Cronus. That was her power. That was what Henry had been so scared of. They'd worked together so Cronus could take me from him. It was the only explanation. "I love you," I babbled, inhaling his scent. He smelled of ash and blood. "I love you so much. I'm sorry, I didn't mean everything's all right now. You're safe," he said, rubbing my back like Ava had minutes before. My stomach turned inside out. "Oh God, where's Ava?" Another cool hand touched the back of my neck. "Mom." "Ava's with Walter over there, sweetheart," she said, nodding toward a dark blur several rows down. Ava's shoulders shook, and Walter embraced her, whispering words I couldn't hear. Nicholas was captured. My head pounded, and it took everything I had not to be sick, all over the marble floor. "Is everyone else?" "We're alive," said another voice, James. Henry glanced up. "Did the trap hold?" "Yes, it's not perfect, but it'll buy us some time. What's going on?" "Calliope escaped with Cronus," said Henry. James muttered a curse and sat down heavily beside me. I didn't let go of Henry, but I did find James's hand and squeezed it. He gripped mine in return. "What now?" he said to Henry. "We wait. Are the others coming?" "Ella's injured," said James. "Theo and Sophia are tending to her. Everyone else is all right." I buried my face in Henry's shoulder and took several shaky breaths to calm myself. Cronus and Calliope were trapped. Henry and my mother and James were all right, and everything would be okay, except the part where Ava may have just lost her husband. We waited for the others to arrive, and they did one by one. Some of them were bloodied, and others walked away without a scratch. Persephone returned on Dylan's arm, looking no worse for wear, but Ella, she and Theo appeared together toward the edge of the circle. She was lying on the floor, trembling in the color of chalk, and the pool of blood spread around her, and I went numb. Her left arm was gone. Theo's hands were on either side of her head, and his brow furrowed as he stared into her eyes. Even when the others gathered around him, he didn't look away. I pressed my face into Henry's chest, unable to watch. "Did Calliope hurt you?" said Henry quietly, so only I could hear him, and I nodded. It wasn't physical pain, but I understood now what he meant. "It's gone now," I lied. The mental fog had disappeared with her and Cronus, but an ache remained where that fiery heat had slithered through me. "I'm okay." Henry fell silent, and I consoled myself with the fact that telling the truth wouldn't make any difference. There was nothing he could do about it, not when Theo was busy with Ella, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. It didn't matter what Calliope had done to me. Whatever it was, I was alive and in one piece. "The council reconvene in 5 minutes," said Walter. "Theo, take Ella to her room and tend to her there. I already know your decision." Theo didn't acknowledge him, but in the blink of an eye, he and Ella were gone, leaving the marble floor stained scarlet. Dead silence filled the throne room until my mother rose, and with a wave of her hand the blood vanished. If only it was that simple. Maybe then I could pretend that we weren't all plunging face first into the beginning of a brutal war. This time Henry didn't touch me. As Walter stood to address what remained of the council, I left my hand on the armrest of my throne in case he wanted to take it, but it remained at his side. He barely looked at me, since I'd confirmed that Calliope had done something to me, and I struggled not to blurt out the whole truth of it. There was nothing he could do to fix it anyway, and as long as I still loved Henry, it didn't matter what else she did to me. "We will continue to fight Cronus," said Walter, and Henry averted his eyes from his brother. "It will not be easy, and after what happened today, I will not order any of you to help. If you do not feel ready or willing to risk yourselves for this cause, you may leave, and no one will think any less of you for it." I was certain that with how close-knitted the council was, no one would back down. So when Dylan and Xander stood, I stared at them shocked. They both acknowledged the council with a nod, and Dylan led out the way of the throne room. I knew he thought it was a losing battle, but I had never expected him or anyone else to abandon the rest of the council. Neither had the others, it seemed, with Theo and Ella also missing. Only 10 of us remained, and I was sure Persephone had no intention of sticking around for the fight. If Henry insisted I couldn't take part again, then the number dropped to 8. "Very well," said Walter. "The trap we have constructed will last us until the next winter solstice, and it is my intention between now and then that brother, said Henry, if I may. By all means, said Walter, and Henry stood stiffly. Sisters and brothers, he said, focusing on the pillars behind the pews instead of the other members of the council. I regret to say that I have decided to withdraw from the war as well. My mouth fell open, and a murmur rippled through the remaining council members. Ava, who looked like a child curled up on her massive throne made of seashells, began to cry. Walter shifted his weight, as if he were about to step forward, but at the last minute changed his mind. We are counting on you, he said slowly. Together, with some time, we have a chance, but without you, the underworld is my realm, not the world above. I will seal it off and ensure that Cronus remains trapped until the winter solstice. But I have made my decision, said Henry. I ask that you all understand it was not made lightly. My mother stood, and she had the same look on her face that she'd worn when I decided to color my hair purple at 11 and get a tattoo when I was 14. Neither of those things had happened. Henry, we are all frightened at the risks, but if you refuse to help us, we will lose. Surely you know that. The blood Cronus has already spilled. It is a shame, and those of you who are injured have my deepest sympathy, said Henry. You, of all people, should understand why I am doing this. Diana Kate is Calliope's target, and you cannot deny that it is a miracle nothing happened to her today. I have already failed her twice, and I will not allow for a third time. I was on my feet before I realized what I was doing. The ache of my guilt and grief swiftly replaced my fury. Don't you dare use me as an excuse to abandon your family. Calliope will come after me whether you fight with them or not. I won't stand by and let you do nothing just so everyone can blame me when the council loses. No one would blame you, my dear, said Walter. Henry, without you, loss is inevitable. There is no one else capable of stopping Cronus, and if Calliope does not see the error of her ways within a year— I am sorry, said Henry. I will not change my mind. You are not an excuse, Kate. If I step aside and seal the underworld, no matter the outcome of the war, I will be able to keep you safe while continuing my duties and watching over the dead. Why can't you fight anyway? I said. Everyone's going to die if you don't. Everyone may die if I do, he said. I will not risk your life. We have already seen the lengths Calliope will go to destroy you, and with Cronus's interest in you, it is far too dangerous. Before I could sputter out a retort, Persephone stood. What about the other Titans? If Henry, what other Titans? I said, my heart pounding. Persephone gave me a look. Would you let me finish? If Henry doesn't want to help, then fine. There's obviously nothing any of us can say to change his mind. Her eyes flashed as she glared at Walter. Father said no one would be judged for backing out. And before you throw a fit, Kate, we aren't the only ones who can fight him. Not all the other Titans were imprisoned. If we're lucky, the ones who weren't might be willing to help us. The chances of the other Titans agreeing to fight on our side after we usurped them are infinitesimal, said Walter, his expression hardening. Nor would it be wise for us to risk giving Cronus allies. Isn't it worth a shot? Said Persephone. Rhea might help us, said James, who remained quiet up until now. I know where she is. We do not have time to court her, said Walter. We must prepare, and convincing her to go against her mate will undoubtedly take time. Then let me do it, I said, sounding much braver than I felt. I want to do something. Kate, said Henry, but I cut him off. Don't. You made your decision, and now let me make mine. If you're not going to participate, then we need to find someone else who will. Henry is right, said Walter. You have had no experience with the Titans before. You are new to this life, and one wrong word. Then send someone with me. We cannot spare anyone, said Walter tightly. If you wish to go, you can spare me. Ava spoke softly without conviction, but her voice rose above Walter's, and he paused. As they exchanged looks, something seemed to pass between them. Very well, said Walter, and hope fluttered within me. Finally, I wouldn't be useless. Even if Rhea didn't want to help, I would at least have the chance to try to make up for Henry withdrawing because of me. I couldn't sit around and not do anything when, no matter what anyone else said, I knew their loss would be my fault. A shadow passed over Henry, darkening the lines in his face until he was nearly unrecognizable. Kate, please, whatever concerns you have about taking blame for this, how do you think I would feel if you did this because I withdrew the worst happened to you? Something snapped inside of me. Of all the things he could use against me, this was the route he chose? That's the problem, Henry. I don't know how you feel about me. Everyone else seems to have an opinion about it, but the only person I want to hear from is you. You won't tell me, though, no matter how much I beg. All you do is risk the lives of everyone I love to keep me safe. How do you think that makes me feel?" For a moment he looked bewildered, but he quickly masked it with a neutral expression. "Before I met you, I was ready to fade. If something were to happen to you, my wishes have not changed." At first I thought I'd heard him wrong. He'd manipulated me before, the entire council had, but he'd never used his life against me. That was a line I thought he wouldn't dare cross. Apparently I'd been wrong. "Forgive me for not being worried," I said, my words dripping with sarcasm as every small step we'd taken in the past few weeks crumbled. "Now that Persephone's back in your life, I'd imagine you want to stick around as long as there's a chance she'll kiss you again." Henry stilled, and behind me I heard my mother kiss again. "Persephone?" That painful knot in my chest returned. "I know I'm not her and that I never will be, but you know what, Henry, that's a good thing, because unlike her, I'm not going to betray you. I'm not going to fall in love with someone else and decide you're not worth it, because you're it for me. As long as you want me here, I'll stay. But no matter how much I love you, I will not let you manipulate me like this. It isn't fair to me. It isn't fair to this council. And you have to stop it before it destroys us completely. Be as miserable as you like. You want to make out with her, even though she doesn't love you? Even though you haven't so much as kissed me good night since I arrived? Fine. Avoid me for years. Avoid me for eons. But don't dare try to stop me from doing what little I can to help prevent the world from crumbling." While Henry stared at me, his mouth slightly open, I turned to Walter. Henry didn't get a say in what I did this time. "If you don't mind, I'm going to get ready. The sooner we have another Titan on our side, the better chance we have at winning." Walter nodded once, and I stepped from the platform and walked through the circles, focusing straight ahead. I wouldn't let any of them see me break down. No one followed me through the pillars and into the antechamber. Once I closed the door, I leaned against it and shut my eyes, struggling to calm my racing heart. I'd done the right thing. Henry had left me with no other choice, and even if he pulled away now, at least it would be in earnest, and not because he thought I didn't love him. The door behind me opened, and I stumbled. Persephone slid into the room and quickly shut the door, and in those few seconds I heard several members of the council shouting at one another. "Well, you certainly know how to make an exit," said Persephone wryly, but her smirk dropped. "I'm sorry for what you saw. I had no idea." As if me being oblivious would have made it any better. "It doesn't matter," I mumbled, all the fight draining out of me. "I know why you did it." "Do you?" She sat on one of the benches and gestured for me to join her. I perched on the other end, as far away from her as I could get. I know how he feels about me. It's never been any secret, and no matter how strongly I discouraged him, it kept growing stronger. That was one of the reasons I decided to give up my immortality," she added, "because I knew eventually it would get to the point where he wouldn't be able to take it anymore, and I'd hurt him enough as it was." As pretty a story as it was, I didn't believe her. Persephone was nothing if not selfish, maybe not as much as I'd initially thought, but I'd seen enough to know that my first impressions weren't completely wrong. "You're doing the right thing," she said, echoing my self-assurances. "I understand why Henry's withdrawing from the fight, but he's doing it for the wrong reasons." "You mean trying to keep me alive isn't a good enough reason?" "Yes, that's exactly what I mean," she said, and I grimaced. There was no point in arguing, though. She was right. Like it or not, you're just one person. Cronus will rip the entire world apart if he escapes the island. "You don't think I know that?" I snapped. "If I could hand myself over and stop this entire thing, I would, but I can't because Calliope wants them all dead now. I don't need you rubbing my nose in it." Persephone sighed. "Sorry, seems I can't say anything right, can I?" That could easily be solved if she stopped treating me like I didn't know anything. I didn't, but there was no reason for her to be so offensive about it. "Anyway," said Persephone, after a few seconds passed in silence, "that's what I wanted to make sure of, that you knew why I kissed him. I'm sorry." I stared at my hands. I would have rather chewed off my thumbs than have this conversation. "I'm not mad at you for kissing him. I'm mad at Henry for wanting it." "You knew before it happened that he would," she said. "So did I, but you know what? He didn't enjoy it." I gave her a wary look. "What do you mean?" "So you didn't hear that part after all?" she said with a trace of smugness. "I thought so. You would have freaked out if you had." I scowled. It was hard enough being civil to her without her acting like this. "Just tell me already, would you?" She rolled her eyes. "That temper will get you into trouble some day. I asked Henry if it was good as he expected, and he admitted it wasn't. It took him a while, but I think he understands that what we had was never real." I said nothing. Even if I was wrong, that wouldn't change how he'd treated me the past few months. It wouldn't change how much he'd wanted to kiss her in the first place. Persephone tugged on a blonde curl, and then she let it go, and it sprang back into a perfect spiral. She'd probably never had a bad hair day in her life. Our whole relationship was my fault for being too young and scared. I wasn't ready for marriage, and I knew that before I married him. The right thing would have been to just put it off for a few hundred years and get to know him first. If I'd done that, there's no telling what might have happened, but I didn't wait, and we both paid the price. Henry more than you, I mumbled. Henry more than me, she agreed. I've had to carry that guilt for my entire afterlife. Ever since I left him, I've hoped that someone would come along and give him another chance, someone like you, she said, poking my arm. I shied away from her touch, and she dropped her hand into her lap. Just because it didn't work out between us doesn't mean I don't love him. Not the way he wants me to, but I still care about what happens to him. I'm glad he found you. I'm glad Mother decided to try again for a daughter that she could finally be proud of. In that moment, some of my animosity toward Persephone melted, and I tentatively reached out to her. As hard as it was for me to bear the pressure of living up to my mother's expectations, I'd never considered how difficult it had been for Persephone to go against them in the first place. She's proud of you, she said to herself, and she knows you deserved a chance to be happy. I know that too, I added. I just wish Henry could look at me the way he looks at you. Persephone wrapped her fingers around mine. You should be glad he doesn't. When he looks at me, he hurts. When he sees you, she smiled faintly, he has hope. And I'm not surprised you don't notice it. It took me a while to read him, too. I spent thousands of years with him, though, and I know that look. I saw it the day we got married. You don't forget the first time someone looks at you like that. I bit my lip. I wanted to believe her badly. She did know Henry. She gained nothing by lying to me, and it was any chance she was being honest I had to take it. How do I do this? How do I get him to love me? Just be you. Persephone parted my hand and stood. It won't take him long to see what he has. I'm going to go. All right, I pushed my hair behind in my ears. I'll probably see you before I leave. You won't, she smiled briefly, and in that moment she looked so much like our mother that I did a double take. I'm leaving as soon as the meeting's over. I've stayed here long enough, and as fun as it's been battling Cronus, I miss Adonis. I'll be back if they need me, she added. Until then, I'm going home. Oh, relief washed over me, followed immediately by guilt. As terrible as things had been in the beginning, and as much as I wanted to hate her for what she'd done with Henry, she was trying. And she was still my sister. Thank you for everything. Any time, she set her hand on the door, but before she opened it, she hesitated. You can come visit me if you want. I'd like that. I've never had a real sister before, and it'd be nice to get to know you. As much as I love Adonis, sometimes he can be a bit monotonous. I managed a small smile. Somehow that didn't surprise me. I'd like that, too. I'm sorry I barged in on you and disrupted your afterlife like that. I'm not. She winked and disappeared back into the throne room. The door swung shut, muffling the council's bickering once more. I still wasn't sure how I felt about Persephone, but at least now we would have the chance to get to know each other on our own terms, if I survived. An hour later, I'd strewn half my closet across the bed, and Pogo was buried underneath a pile of sweaters. I didn't know where Avo and I would be going, so I had to prepare for any possibility. Where did a Titan stay without being noticed anyway? Up on a mountain somewhere? Antarctica? To the Sahara Desert? Either way, the possibilities were endless and not very promising, which meant that I had to be ready for anything. Think you can put up with missing me for another few months? I said as Pogo dug himself out. My clothes would smell like a puppy now. But I didn't care. It would be a nice reminder of him when I was lonely. He let out a soft yip, and I grinned in spite of myself. He will miss you, said a voice behind me. Startled, I dropped the boots I was stuffing into the empty suitcase I could find. I expected him to stay away, but there he was, his shoulders squared and his eyes stormy. Henry. Chapter 18. Rocked. My mouth went dry, and I picked up the boots and tossed them on the bed. I'd been so convinced that he wouldn't want anything else to do with me that I hadn't bothered to think what to say. I had no real reason to apologize, except for maybe calling him out in front of everyone, but that was the only part I regretted. I'm sorry about the mess. I was just packing. Yes, I see that. He waved a hand, and my already overstuffed suitcase seemed empty. When I opened my mouth to protest, I saw that he hadn't made anything finish. The suitcase had only gotten deeper. Is this a bad time? The last thing I wanted was to fight with him. But I couldn't very well leave the underworld before finishing this one way or another. I have a few minutes, I said, folding a pair of jeans. What was all that arguing about? The corner of Henry's mouth twitched with annoyance. What you might expect. Diana was not pleased with me, and neither was Walter. I suspect that despite our earlier discussion, you are not either. I considered lying, but it wouldn't do any good. No, I'm not, I said. We never figured it out, but I don't want to be the person who tries to force you to feel something you don't. I mean what I said. I won't leave you unless you don't want me here anymore. I wish for you to stay, yet here you are packing 3 months early, he said quietly, and I stopped. You know why, I mumbled. I'll be back as soon as I find Ria. For how long? I gently extracted the boot I dropped from Pogo's mouth. As long as you'll have me. That will be a very long time. I exhaled and smiled, feeling as if a weight were lifted off my chest. Good. He stepped toward me and touched my cheek. I enjoy seeing you smile. It means I have done something right. I am afraid that sometimes I cannot tell. It's okay. I tilted my head into his hand. He cupped my face and brushed his thumb against my jaw. Persephone told me that you said it wasn't as good as you expected. When she kissed you, I mean. Something flickered behind his eyes, but it was gone so fast I couldn't tell what it was. No, it was not. I find little joy in showing affection to someone who does not return it. Yeah, me too. I covered his hand with mine and pressed my lips against his palm. It hurts being the one who loves more. Henry stepped closer so our bodies were only inches apart. Despite the warmth that radiated from him, I shivered. If I had been unchained, I would have ripped Calliope to pieces in the cavern. Had Walter allowed me, I would have done it the moment I had her alone in the palace. I snored softly. Is that supposed to be romantic? It is supposed to be the truth. He stared at me and my breath caught in my throat. If I were a better man, I would be able to show you the love and affection you deserve. As I am not, I can only offer you what I am capable of giving, but I assure you, just because I do not show it does not mean I do not feel it. It was exactly what everyone had been trying to tell me since September, but hearing the words come from Henry finally made me believe them. I think I am getting that, I said thickly. I don't want you to be anyone you aren't. Then trust me when I say there is no one else I would rather be with. He ran his fingers through my hair and tickled my neck with the ends. Not even Persephone. She was my past, and I was never her future. There was a time when I fought for her, but fighting for someone is meaningless if they are not happy with you. Am I doing the right thing, then? I said, fighting for you? He circled his arms around my waist when he was so close that I couldn't feel his breath against my cheek. No, he said, and the word made my stomach contract. But before I could panic, he continued, his voice smooth and meant only for me. You never had to fight for me to begin with. I am yours and have been for the moment I saw you. Everything I'd worried myself sick about, every awful thought I'd had, every doubt, deserved or not, Henry could have prevented them all if he'd simply said that in September. Even the ways Persephone had kissed him, I could have understood if only I hadn't been left alone with my fears for so long, or maybe if we'd talked about it earlier. She would have never had to kiss him in the first place. I wheezed a sigh of relief. It would have been nice to know that 3 months ago. A ghost of a smile graced his features. Yes, I suppose it would have been, and I'm sorry for how I have acted. I will do better in the future. He pressed his lips to my forehead. Please do not go. In that moment, the last thing I wanted to do was to leave him, and I looped my arms around him. You know I have to. I can't stand by and do nothing, and without Ria, you could all die. It's worth the risk, you know it is. Henry sighed. You are too stubborn for your own good. I hear it runs in the family. A moment passed, and I said softly, When I come back, would it be all right if you stayed? He furrowed his brow. Why would it not? I would do anything to make you not go. But that doesn't mean I will not welcome you back when you return. No, I mean, I hesitated. Our deal. Do I have to leave every spring, or can I stay down here with you? He stilled, at last understanding. I held my breath as I waited for his answer, and he pulled away enough to look at me, his eyes searching mine. He couldn't find the lie he was looking for, though. You want to stay here all year? With me? With you, as your wife. As my wife, he echoed, his gaze growing distant. I bit my lip. Is that all right? Staying here all year wouldn't be breaking any rules or anything, would it? I am the one who makes the rules. If you wish to stay, then you may. He cupped my neck, his palm warm against my bare skin. I would be very grateful if you did, but I do not want you to, unless you are certain it is what you want. You wouldn't have the opportunity to visit the surface whenever you wished, but it is dreary down here. He hesitated, as if he didn't know he should bring it up or not. Persephone used to say that once you have seen the sun, it is impossible to truly be happy without it. I'll probably go up for a few days every once in a while, I said, brushing off the twinge of jealousy inside me at this mention of Persephone. He simply didn't want to put me in the same situation. I could understand that, and if we were going to have any chance at making this work, I had to. Persephone had been a huge part of his life, and in some ways she still was. I could either fight it or accept it, and right then I would have done anything to stop feeling so miserable all the time. including swallow my pride and forgive my sister for what she'd done to Henry and forgive Henry for still loving her. But while the surface has the sun, I would much rather be down here with you." He rested his forehead against mine. "I would be honored." We stood like that for a long moment. I noticed the silver scar from Cronus's first attack peeking out from underneath Henry's collar, and I traced it. He would be safe in the underworld, and I wouldn't have to worry about his safety anymore. Everyone else's, yes, but not Henry's. In the council meeting, he paused and brushed his thumb against my bottom lip. "You said I have not given you a kiss good night since you arrived. I know it is not yet noon, but would now be an acceptable time to remedy that?" I grinned so hard that the muscles in my cheeks strained. It had been a prolonged time since I'd smiled like that. I'd missed it. Now would be perfect. When his lips touched mine, desire flooded through me, intertwining with delicious triumph. Calliope hadn't won. No matter what she did to me or how many titans she sent to kill me, she would never take Henry away from me. I wrapped my arms around his neck and let my body mold to the contours of his. There was no substitute for the warmth that filled me, no amount of holding me at night to make up for the lack of this between us. It was perfect. Henry, with all of his imperfections, and me with mine, together we were just right. He eased me onto the mattress and brushed my piles of clothing aside to make room for both of us. At the foot of the bed, Pogo let out an annoyed squeak and jumped onto the floor. I would give him a nice long belly rub later, because right now, short of Cronus appearing in the bedroom, nothing was going to pull me away from Henry. When he toyed with the hem of my sweater, I tugged it off and tossed it amidst the other clothing. He splayed his hand over my bare stomach and broke away from me, watching me with a baffled look in his eyes. "What is it?" I said, catching my breath. "Is everything all right?" It took him a moment to respond. "Are you sure you wish to do this?" Every doubt I'd had come rushing back. But after a moment of dizzying panic, I remembered what Persephone had told me about her and Henry's wedding night. This would be the first time we'd done this without the influence of an aphrodisiac, and if he thought there was a chance I could react like Persephone had, then his hesitation made perfect sense. I forced myself to breathe steadily. I'm positive. Henry seemed to accept this, but when he leaned in to kiss me again, another awful possibility popped into my mind, and I turned my head at the last moment so he caught my cheek instead. "Why? Do you not want me to?" "We don't have to if you'd rather not. It's all right. I can wait. I want to wait if you want to. I promise you that I want to do this more than anything else in the world," he said, pressing his lips to the corner of my mouth. "I have wanted to since you first returned, but I thought giving you time would be prudent. And here I was thinking you'd have rather slept in a pool of lava than with me," I joked, but it wasn't entirely false. I gave him a quick kiss in return. "We need to work on this whole talking to each other thing. We'd get a lot more done if we did." "Yes, we would," he said before capturing my lips once more. I deftly unbuttoned his shirt, but when it fell open I pulled away again. "You're not going to get angry again and throw things when it's over, will you?" I said, and Henry gave me a look that sent a jolt of electricity down my spine. The look Persephone had mentioned, the look I knew I could never forget how that I'd seen it. "Would you please hush and let me kiss you?" Laughing, I pulled him back toward me. "I'm all yours." He shrugged his shirt off and ran his hands down my sides, and everything else seemed to melt away. He was the only thing I could see, and the only thing I could feel, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. For the first time since I'd arrived in the underworld, I was home. Henry and I spent the rest of the day and night in bed together, talking and laughing and knocking boots, as Ava had so delicately called it. In between, we slept, curled together, and my head on his chest and his arm around me, the same position we'd slept in during my time in Eden Manor. It was familiar and comforting, and with so much uncertainty lying ahead of us, I needed that badly. In the middle of the night, I woke up to him hovering over me, watching me. Caught between sleeping and consciousness, I ran my hand down his chest, stripping my finger to his navel. "Is everything all right?" "Perfect." A glowing ball of light appeared near the top of the canopy bed. I was simply thinking about the future. "What about it?" I said. "If you're going to try to talk me into not going after Rhea, you can forget it." Always jumping to conclusions. He chuckled and kissed me, and I obediently shut up. "I meant what it would be like to have you here all year. I have never had anyone spend that much time in the underworld with me before." "I want to," I whispered. "You're my family now." I expected him to kiss me again, but instead he pulled away. In the low light I thought I saw him studying me, but my vision was blurry from sleep and I couldn't be sure. "Do you still want to be my queen?" "Of course," I said, confused. "I thought that was implied with the whole being your wife thing. You do not have to take on the duties of the queen of the underworld now if you feel you are not ready," said Henry. "You are my wife no matter what role you play in the work I do." I didn't answer right away. I couldn't control the power I had so far. Whatever other ones came along with ruling the underworld, there was no guarantee I would be able to control those either. Do you think I can do it? Yes, said Henry unequivocally. You may not understand everything right away, but in time I have no doubt you will be the best partner I could ask for. You have a rare gift. Falling all over myself and screwing up every choice I make, I said wryly, and he pressed his finger to my lips. Not every choice, he teased, and his expression grew somber. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you. You have the extraordinary ability to bring people together when they want nothing more than to walk away and never come back. You see the simplest solutions when we often see only the complications, and you have hope in the most impossible situations. But most of all, you understand people. When you see someone, you do not see their actions despite how you may feel about them, and you see their motivations and have the compassion to understand them. That is how I know you will be a great queen. Not even I have that self-control. I wasn't so sure he was right about all of that, but his sincerity in his voice stopped my objections cold. It didn't matter whether or not his vision of me was biased, no matter what was that he believed me. I traced an invisible pattern on the hollow of his collarbone. The smartest thing to do would have been to wait. Wait until the end of the war, until I could close my eyes and see any place or anyone I wanted. Wait until I finally understood what it was like to live, let alone die. But as Henry watched me with those eyes the color of moonlight shining in the dim light floating above us, I knew my answer. I had put my life on hold while waiting for my mother to die. I wasn't going to wait anymore. I couldn't dash Henry's hopes just because I wasn't 100% sure I could do this. Henry was, and that meant more to me than I could ever express. Yes, I said without a hint of uncertainty. I want to be your queen, whenever you're able to do the ceremony. As soon as I return, if you like. Henry took my hands in his, and a glowing yellow light appeared between them, ethereal and warm against my skin. I do not see a reason to wait. My eyes widened, and I didn't give myself the chance to second guess it. This was what I wanted. I'd prepared for this since the moment Henry had found me in the river beside Ava's dead body, and Henry was right. There was no reason to wait. Neither do I. He smiled, and that was all I needed to know I was making the right choice. As my wife, you have consented to take up the responsibilities of Queen of the Underworld, he said, the same words he'd said exactly 3 months earlier. You shall rule fairly and without bias over the souls of those who have departed to the world above, and from autumnal equinox to spring of every year hence, you shall devote yourself to the task of guiding those who are lost and protecting all from harm beyond their eternal lives. I held my breath, knowing what came next. Do you, Kate Winters, accept the role of Queen of the Underworld, and do you agree to uphold the responsibilities and expectations of such? This time I didn't hesitate. Yes, I whispered, 100% yes. The light between our hands disappeared, and for a moment we were pitched into darkness. Before I could so much as blink, however, every light in the room swelled to blinding brightness. Between our hands, floating above our bed, even the candles flamed, and a great chime echoed through the bedroom, through the palace, through the entire underworld as far as I knew. My queen, said Henry, kissing my knuckles, I am honored. I blushed. Is that it, then? I said. I'm queen? I am certain the council will require a more formal ceremony, but you are my queen. He cupped my chin and pressed his lips to mine, chastely at first, but as the seconds passed, the promise of more formed between us. Now that you are awake, I must say that it would be a shame to waste this beautiful night simply by talking. Are you suggesting we celebrate? I said, and my eyebrows rose playfully. I thought being queen would feel different somehow, like something inside of me would have fundamentally changed, but I felt the same. I was still me, and with Henry beside me, that was all I needed to be. I am suggesting that this will be our last night together for a while, he murmured, and I would like to make the most of it. Wordlessly I kissed him, pouring every bit of hope and happiness and love inside me into it. The light dimmed as he lowered me back onto the bed, and for the first time in a long time I was sure that everything would be all right. When morning came, we were both somber. After I spent 20 minutes struggling to fold and stuff everything I thought I might need into my suitcase, Henry waved his hand and somehow managed to pack my things for me in a matter of seconds. I pretended not to be jealous, but inwardly I hoped that Ava knew how to do the same. If she didn't, we would be spending half our time trying to close that sucker and make everything fit, and we had much more important things to focus on. We met my mother, Walter, James, Ava, in the foyer of the guest wing shortly after. Henry and I walked side by side, his arm around my shoulders, and I worried that he wouldn't be willing to let go. He'd barely spoken a word since I'd closed the zipper on my suitcase, but every time our eyes met, he gave me a small, pained smile as if trying to prove that he wasn't upset with me. It helped, but it didn't stop the stab of guilt whenever I thought about the possibility that I might not come home. Ava looked like Her eyes were red and puffy, and for the first time since I met her, her hair wasn't brushed. Her clothes were loose and the sort I wore to bed, not the tight, revealing tops and skirts she usually wore. She stared at the ground with her hands shoved in her pockets, and she didn't so much as blink when her father moved past her to join me. "Are you ready?" said Walter, and I nodded. Henry dragged my suitcase behind him, and Walter set his hand on Ava's shoulder. "My dear, would you be so kind?" Ava finally raised her eyes from the floor, and a moment later my suitcase disappeared. "It's safe," she said when I opened my mouth to protest. "You'll have it when we get there." "Where exactly are we going anyway?" I said, and James handed me an envelope made of heavy parchment, the sort that people have used thousands of years ago. "Rhea moves around a lot," he said. "She's stayed in the same place for the past few years, though, so you might get lucky and find her before she moves on. I've written down directions. If you get there and you can't find her, Ava knows how to contact me." I glanced at Ava. Was she even up for this? She shuffled her feet and refused to meet anyone's stare, and she certainly didn't look like she was about to go on a whirlwind trip to find a Titan. As much as I wanted to try to shake her out of it, though, she had every right to act this way. Nicholas was gone, and for all I knew, she would never see him again. James seemed to have the same idea I did. He eyed Ava, his mouth hanging open like he was going about to say something, and then he paused. "Maybe I should come too," he said, "to make sure you find her." "No," said Walter. "The fewer who participate in the planning, the less likely we are to win." I offered James a small smile. "It's okay. If we need you, we'll get a hold of you, but I don't think it's a good idea either. You obviously need it here." While I wasn't lying, my reasons for wanting him to stay had nothing to do with whether or not Walter needed him. James was the first person Persephone had been with behind Henry's back, and even though Henry knew how much I loved him, I had no intention of giving him a reason to question it. Unfortunately for now, James would only become another obstacle, and Henry and I had enough of those lately. Henry let go of me long enough to let my mother embrace me, and I wished with everything I had this wasn't the last time I would see her. If Rio was anything like Cronus, there was no telling what could happen, and whether I wanted that to or not, I had to prepare myself for the worst. "Take care of yourself, sweetheart," murmured my mother, and she brushed a lock of hair out of my eyes. "I'm so proud of you." My face grew warm. "I love you. I love you too, sweetheart." She relinquished me to James, who gave me an awkward hug and a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "Stay safe. If you ever get lost, don't hesitate to have Ava contact me." "I won't." I paused and leaned in closer to him so he could only hear me. I'd choose Henry. After I get back, I'm staying with him all year. I'll still be your friend, but Henry's my husband and I love him and I will always choose him." Something I didn't recognize passed over James' face and he nodded. "As long as it's your decision, I'll respect it," he said, and even though I suspected that would change the moment he thought Henry wasn't being the sort of husband James believed he should be, for now I didn't press the issue. "Thank you," I said, and James kissed me lightly on the cheek, a silent goodbye to me, an eternity of could-have-beens. And then it was Henry's turn, and he gathered me up, burying his nose in my hair. For a moment his arms were so firm around me that I thought he wouldn't let go, but eventually he did. I took his hands. "I'll be back as soon as I can, I promise," I said, even though I knew that was a vow I might not be able to keep. "Just remember what we have to look forward to, all right? Please do not go," he said quietly. "I will do whatever you ask of me, but I simply do not know what I would do if something happened to you." "Nothing will happen to me." I rose on my tiptoes, and even though everyone was watching, I kissed him, deepening it for a few seconds before I reluctantly dropped back on my heels. "I need to do this, and after I'm done, I won't fight you on your decision to stay out of the war. You have my word that I'll sit out, too." He looked unhappy, but at least he nodded. Henry cupped the back of my neck and kissed me again, and I closed my eyes, wishing I didn't have to go away at all. All the wishing in the world wouldn't change the danger we were all in, though, and I could either hide away with Henry to protect me, or I could do something about it, just like I would always choose Henry. I'd already made that choice as well. "Love you," I whispered, when he broke away, and for a brief moment his face crumpled as if he were about to cry. He quickly smoothed it out again, and the only sign of how he really felt was the red rimming his eyes. "I love you too," he said. "Please come home." "I will." Giving him one last peck on the cheek, I joined Ava at the other end of the foyer and waved, but only my mother waved back. "Let go." "So let's go," I said to Ava, linking her arm in mine. She wordlessly opened the door, and without looking back, we walked through the garden of jewels toward the portal that would return us to Eden. The journey up the portal and through the rock was as jarring as it had been when James had first led me down. I kept my eyes firmly shut and held on to Ava as tightly as I dared, but no amount of pretending I was elsewhere would keep the nausea at bay. At least we stopped moving. I opened my eyes. The foyer of Eden Manor surrounded us, and I let out a sigh of relief. That wasn't something I wanted to do often, and avoiding the portal alone might very well have convinced me to stay in the underworld with Henry. Outside, it was the dead of the winter. Snow fell in thick clumps, clinging to the trees that lined the pathway toward the gate, and I raised my face toward the sky, sticking my tongue out in hopes of catching a flake. "I've missed the snow," I said. "Why wasn't anyone's ideas of a perfect afterlife full of snow? What's so special about warm weather, anyway?" I'd meant it as a joke, but Ava stopped cold, her grip on my elbow like a vice. "Wait." "What?" I said. "Ava, we have to go." She shook her head. "No, not yet. We should get Henry or James or—" I pried her hand off me. "I know you're upset about Nicholas, but the sooner we find Rita, the sooner we'll be able to rescue him. We can't do that if we keep going back to say goodbye." "It isn't that," Ava swallowed, but I was already on my way over the hill. Kate stopped. She hurried after me, and I quickened my stride. Whatever was bothering her could wait until we were on the plain to wherever James' note specified. Ava caught up with me a few feet from the gate, and she grabbed my arm again. "Kate, please, you don't understand." "Hello, Kate." Calliope stepped into the dirt road that ran parallel to the gate. A devilish smile twisted across her lips. I froze. It couldn't be. Icy fear washed over me, erasing everything else that I'd felt that morning. I was going to die. Calliope was going to murder me and string my body across the gates of Eden for Henry to find when he came looking for me. "You can't," said Ava desperately. "Calliope, please, you don't understand." "Of course I understand." The gate swung open, and Calliope crooked finger toward us. I dug my heels into the ground, but an invisible force dragged me toward her, past the boundary of Eden Manor. Ava tugged on my arm, trying in vain to stop me. "You did well," said Calliope to Ava. "Your husband will be proud to know his wife is willing to go to such lengths to ensure his safety, and you shall reap the rewards of his loyalty you have shown me." My mouth dropped open. Ava's eyes filled with tears, and she tried to take my hand, but I pulled it back. "You knew she'd be waiting?" "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Oh, so sorry, Kate. I didn't know." "Of course you knew," said Calliope, with a dismissive weight of her hand, and the gate clanged shut. "Don't pretend you had nothing to do with this, Ava. Lying is very unattractive." "Why would you do this to me?" I said to Ava, stunned. "Why would you do this to Henry and the rest of the council?" Ava sobbed. "Calliope, you can't. Please, I'll do anything. You can't. She's pregnant." "Pregnant?" I blinked. "Who? Calliope?" Both of them looked at me. Ava's face is a mess of guilt and despair, and Calliope's shining with satisfaction. All the air left my lungs. "Me." Ava meant me. I struggled against the force that held me down. I needed to go back to safety in the underworld and Henry, but my feet were rooted to the ground. "Yes, I know," said Calliope. "You played your part admirably, Ava." I looked back and forth between them, so dizzy I could hardly see straight. "I don't understand. How could you possibly— Ava, what did you do?" "Nothing," she cried. "I swear, Kate, I didn't do anything. She wanted me to make you two sleep together, but I didn't, I promise." My heart pounded. No, Ava hadn't had anything to do with the day before. I was sure of it. It wasn't like the aphrodisiac Calliope had given us in Eden. Ava had known, though. She'd known, and she hadn't done a thing to stop it. "I couldn't tell you were pregnant until you got up here," said Ava. "I'm so sorry. I would have never—" "But I'm not," I said, bewildered. "I can't be. We only just—" "All you had to do was sleep with Henry," said Calliope. "I did the rest." She twitched her finger, and I fell to my knees in the snow. The thing she'd done to me, I realized, horrified. The goddess of marriage and women. And fertility. This had been her plan all along. "I told you that I would take from you what you loved the most," said Calliope, and a large black rock appeared in her hand. It was the same kind of rock that had been in the cavern, and fog swirled inside it. She giggled. "What, did you think I meant Henry?" A wave of nausea swept over me. "Please," I whispered. Her eyes narrowed, and I knew it was hopeless. "You did this to yourself," she said, "and your child. Payback's isn't it?" With that, she cracked the stone against the back of my head, and my world went black. And then, Guide to the Gods. Zeus is Walter. Hera is Calliope. Poseidon, Philip, Demeter, Diana. Hades, Henry, Hestia, Sophia. Ares, Dylan, Aphrodite, Ava. Hermes, James, Athena, Irene. Apollo, Theo. Artemis, Ella. Hephaestus, Nicholas, Dionysius, Xander. And that's the end of Goddess Interrupted. And the next one is the Goddess Inheritance, which I'll read later. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the... Thank you for listening. I'm gonna go now. Thank you for listening. I have to work on something. I have to go. Bye.